the cage is currently, instead of, sorry, I haven't explained, instead of casting rays on a distance here, we will duplicate the base mesh and make it a little bigger. And Blender will calculate the rays from this original surface to the new one created. Meaning that you can make the surface pretty small here, and here go higher. So when you create a cage, you need to make sure that it has exactly the same topology as the original one, meaning it has exactly the same number of face and vertices. The way they are sized, etc. is okay to change, but you can't change the number of polygons, for example, to add more details here or to make a smoother bounce. So what we do is select our model here, our base model, press Shift D and move this newly created object to the third layer here, and we'll call this shield cage. And now we will edit this cage so that it goes over this sculpt. So I will go into edit mode. I will switch to solid view mode here. And what I can do is, it has the same same material as our previous our base model. So I will set the viewport color to something really intense, like this pink. And I will also display the first layer, go into edit mode. So in this way, I can really see the difference of color. And now I will press Alt S, that will allow me to resize this model based on the normals, and make sure you switch to median point, because if you do Alt S with individual origin, you will get a funky result. So I do this. I will go in full screen mode, pressing Ctrl up arrow and press Alt S, and with the Shift key to make it really subtle, I go up until I get kind of an homogeneous result. So now I can see that I should move this ring. So the thing to do is to tweak the geometry to make sure that all the sculpt is under this pink object, this pink mesh. So for example, select this and scale it. So the more time you'll spend, as usual, the better will be your bait map, for sure. So a good way to do it, also another one, instead of using the globals here, you can use the normals, so that the handler here will point in the direction of the normal, which is the best way to edit your model. And then you just have to select the handle here and push the model forward like this. So now, thanks to the magic of the video editing, I have already finished this cage. I can see my base model underlying here, the cage here, and here the sculpted model. So I think we'll get a pretty decent result. So now, in the baking option here, I will select cage, select shield cage, keep this extrusion option selected, because it will set the inward rays. So I think when you're not using a cage, it casts rays on both sides of the normals, while when you're using a cage, it's only casting rays toward the inside, as this basic here. I've made some tests with different values and I can't really see a difference when I'm using a cage. So let's select the shield sculpt here and then the shield. The shield cage is available here, and let's bake our normal again. So now we get this pretty nice normal map here, even if we still have some bugs on those areas due to the projection. So we'll see how to fix those manually. I don't know yet a way to output perfect normal map on a first shot, and I think it's pretty complicated. What I want here is to do everything in Blender, because I generally use a lot of different softwares, but this is kind of the challenge here, so that you can within only one software do everything. So we'll fix it in Blender, but I believe with XNormal or maybe with another method we should get a little better normals. But generally I always have a moment in Photoshop, in whatever software I'm using, where I have to fix some of the maps. So now that I'm happy with this, let's say I'm happy with it, I will go into the UV image editor, press F3, and call this shield normals. And now we will bake our ambient occlusion. So we will keep the option like they are here and select the ambient occlusion here. And we will push the samples to 500. And I will just check that in my outliner I still have this active. So shield sculpt as the selected object to active shield, and with the cage here selected, and click bake. So I will save it first because it will take some time, and click bake here, and I'll see you when it's done. So my AO just finished to be baked, and it looks really awesome. I love it. So I go into the UV image editor, press F3 and call these shields AO, like this, save image. Now we will bake the pointiness map to create the cavity or dirt map. And to do so, we need to give our sculpted shield a material and output something. So I create a new material and let's call it cavity. I will open the 3D image editor, the 3D view, sorry. Border, pressing Ctrl B the area, press Shift Z to enter rendering mode. And now I'll go into the node editor here. And instead of the diffuse BSDF, we'll add an emission shader. So just to let you know that in the user preference here, I've enabled here in node, if I can find it here in node, the node wrangler, which is one of the mandatory add-on to be always enabled and allow you to use shortcut and quick tools while editing your node. So I've added this emission shader, and we will add an input geometry. And what is interesting for us is the pointiness here. So I will Ctrl Shift click the geometry node until I get to the pointiness. And thanks to the node wrangler, it automatically plugged here an emission shader that allows us to see the result here. but as we will be using an emission shader, I can directly plug this into the emission shader and plug it here. So we can see kind of something happening here, that the creases are marked with black and the edges here are marked with white. So I wish we contrast this a little more. To do so, we will use a converter color ramp that we will plug just here. And to make sure that we have still this average value between the creases and the peak, when we will move the black here of position value, we'll do so with the white. So for example, I will move this to 0.4 and the white to 0.6, so that here in the middle it's the 0.5 value. So here is our dirt map in a way. So I will quit rendering viewport mode, pressing Shift Z again. Here, if you want to make some cleanup, you can press Ctrl H and only the pointiness output will be displayed. If I press Alt Ctrl H again, I get to this result. If I press H, it will collapse the node. So Ctrl H just temporarily get rid of the unused sockets here and make your node looks cleaner. So now we will enable all of our layers, including our target shield. We will select the outliner. I will select the shield sculpt, then select the shield here. And still with the same option here, we will select emission and we will bake the emission of the sculpt. That's why I used an emission shader, because the emission shader doesn't need a high range of samples to render properly. 5 will be enough. So now I can click bake and in a few seconds we'll have our cavity map baked. So now I have the cavity map here that is baked properly. So I will go into the UV image editor, press F3 and call it shield cavity. And now I want to create ID mask using the RGB input. So that's going to be very fast. Here I will open the UV image editor so that you can see what's happening. I will select our baker here. Now I will switch to texture paint mode. I will select the fill brush here and will enable this, which allow us to select area based on the geometry on the face. So if I right click here and try to paint, Blender will only paint, so I will use a color, it will be only in the selected faces here. And when I enter edit mode, if I use the face select mode here and press L, Blender will automatically select the part of the mesh based on the UV island. So this is exactly what we want, so that we can isolate this rim and then the nails here and here. So let's get back to the UV texture paint mode. Let's say we want this to be isolated, so I will use a pure green color, so that with the node separate RGB, we will be able to create mask very easily. So with this fill brush with the strength to the maximum, I will go into the option and use the bleed option with a value of 12. Click this. Now I will select those nails and the center one, and I will use a pure red channel color, sorry. I click it, and finally use a pure blue, select L, so A to unselect everything, L to select the wooden part, and paint it. So the only thing that could be bothering here is that our small nails are not isolated. We'll see a little later how we can adjust this. So I will press F3 here and call this shield mask. And now I think we'll be, oh yes, now we need to work on our UV map, on our normal map. So we need to create a shader and fix the little problem we had with the nails here and the border here. So we'll open it in the UV image editor here, shield normals, and the thing to do is to use the smear node here with a strength of 1, it's pretty important, and to push those areas here. So you can see here the border of the nail currently, okay? But we can see that here we have this purplish color that is overing the normals. And now I will push here those values, trying to follow the topology. As soon as you're using a human being to do something, there will be error for sure, but that should fix some of the problems and it should look a little better. Also, we could slightly blur this area, but I will keep it that clear. So now that we have cleaned up our normal map, I will just isolate those here. To do so, I will make some texture painting using the draw brush, and I will use a pure black color, and I will try to paint this as proper as possible. All right. So in the UV image editor, this is my normal map. So I will make sure I save it in another name, call this shield normal ID temp. We'll get rid of it pretty soon then. And now I get back to my former view here. I will press Shift Z to go into render mode and open the node editor here. So I have my shield normals here. I will open the shield mask and Control Shift click it, duplicate this and open our temporary ID here. And now I will Control Shift click it so that we can see it. And I will use a converter color ramp here. And now with this set to linear, I will move the white next to the black. And as I painted those dots in black, they appear perfectly defined here. And I will use this to mix this map, Shift A, color, mix color, with a red channel. So like this, sorry. I will push the red to the maximum. Use the color here as a factor. And now I have those dots appearing. So I can select here this first layer, which is called Baker because the Baker picture was saved as the ID mask. So Blender has kept it named Baker. So with this selected, I will select the emit to be baked. I will get back here to 3D view mode. I will uncheck select to active. And we will bake the emission. Now, if I get back to my UV image editor and select the Baker, I can see my ID here with those dots assigned. So I can save this F3 upon my shield mask. And now we'll go into chapter 2, where we will start painting our shield.